to the House. Thank you.
Dr. Rajan Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm also pleased to speak in the second reading of this important bill, or rather, Mr. Speaker, a bill that could have been much more important in its effects than what it is going to be. Mr. Speaker, the title of the bill is the Child Support Amendment Bill. And the question has to be asked, does it actually support children in the way that modern society expects our children to be supported? And the answer has to be no. And I think the last speaker actually did confirm that the purpose of this bill was not child support. What the last speaker was saying is it's really just a technical bill that really is about the technical transfer of monies. And maybe, Mr. Speaker, that is the problem with how the government members have seen this bill. This side of the House, and ourselves together with the Greens, we're not supporting this bill because we don't think the bill actually achieves the objectives it started off trying to achieve. And those objectives are well worth reading. It was to improve the fairness of the child support scheme and reflect the social changes that are taking place in our society. Well, we don't think on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, that it actually does improve the fairness of the scheme when you look at it from the point of view of children. And the second one was to promote the welfare of children, and particularly to promote the welfare of the children, in particular by recognizing that children are disadvantaged when child support is not paid. Now, the point I'm making here, Mr. Speaker, is that when children will be more disadvantaged by this particular bill. And so there is the member, the chair of the Social Service Select Committee does not accept that. But if the member wants to listen to the arguments, and I'm sure the member will get there in terms of what the purpose of the bill is, and what it does not achieve. Now, child support through the Inland Revenue Service is usually an indication that the family has not been able to work it out. The couples have not been able to work it out. The separating parents have not managed to arrive at any amicable arrangement. If they did, Melissa Lee is right, they would not have been part of this system. So it is right from the beginning. It is fraught with difficulties. The scheme as designed was designed in 1991, so it's an old scheme in terms of, and while it has had amendments since then, Mr. Speaker, it still is now trying to deliver to a very different set of circumstances amongst our families. And so the idea of the review and the promise of the review was something we supported, and it has been going on for some time. And our family form today is very different from what it was in 1971. And the family arrangements today are very, very different. We now have more blended families. We now have more reconstituted families. We have families living in all kinds of different arrangements. And therefore, those arrangements now require different systems for income and for support of children. So clearly then, the arrangements that the bill currently reflects are needed significant reform and not surprising that it's taken some time to get there. But the bill was also, Mr. Speaker, a major opportunity for government to address long-standing issues about children. Members from the government side who have spoken about this have separated that out. Somehow it's simply a technical transfer of funds from one parent to the other in a formulaic way. Well, it is never that simple, and it is always more than that. No wonder that the arrangements around children, around child support, are some of the most difficult negotiations, filled with angst and what have you, Mr. Speaker, that most of us are familiar with. So Mr. Speaker, what we have, when I say that government members government has not taken the opportunity to also look at the life experiences of many of these children. And it could have done so with this particular bill. The provisions that this bill could have come up with are very similar to what exists in overseas jurisdiction. But there is this blank wall, a refusal to look at it in that particular way. 270,000 children, Mr. Speaker, live in poverty in New Zealand, and 133,000 of those live in sole parent families. Why is the government so reluctant to address child poverty? Because by every indication of the past 4 years, it is reluctant to do that. And the government is well aware of the impact of poverty on children and what it does. It essentially excludes them from society. It excludes those families and excludes those children. And while income maintenance is an important aspect of coming back into being included in society, and yet when it comes to our most vulnerable, Mr. Speaker, this government is not taking those opportunities. Somehow it is just too difficult, or ideologically they're opposed to it. They want to keep, Mr. Speaker, the gap that does exist between those who are well off and those who are strugglers. And here was an opportunity the government did not take for themselves. Mr. Speaker, the submitters to the bill were very, very thoughtful. One of the things they said, they wondered about, that the effect of these changes will fall disproportionately on those who will be least able to withstand a reduction in income. And it is the impact statement shows that there will be a reduction in quite a sizable number of families bring up children. So there will be a reduction. And it falls disproportionately. It arises because of the formula of using 28% as the threshold. So if you're providing two nights care out of 7, then you're entitled to a reduction. In fact, the cost to the assuming it's a mum bringing up those children is no less. It doesn't go any less, and yet they will have to manage those children on a reduced income. So how does that work, Mr. Speaker? How is it better? How does it not keep people in poverty, if you like, and in suboptimal conditions as well? So that is a major difficulty. Mr. Speaker, there were many of our major institutions, the Families Commission, the Children's Commission, suggested a pathway to addressing poverty through these regulations, through these particular provisions, and it was the pass-on provisions. So the pass-on provision is simply that the income provided, the amount of money provided by one parent passes to the caring parent. And that immediately, in one stroke, I say to members of it, would have addressed poverty for those 133,000 people. Many of them are in this particular group. And that would have addressed that. But somehow, government was reluctant to address child poverty questions. And it just did not want to look at it. It simply saw, as the last speaker said, this as a technical exercise. But when does a government take responsibility for the most vulnerable in our society? It spends billions of dollars looking at the impact of poverty and impact on our children. And it is happy to do that, whether it's in health or in housing or in education, etc. It's happy to test them in schools simply because those schools are they're not achieving in those schools. And yet when it comes to spending, what in comparative terms is modest income, modest amount of money to address that, it didn't take this opportunity. And there's no response. The government, the members opposite have not addressed that so far. There are just so many things wrong with this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, that even though we support, like the Greens do, the object of this particular bill, create a fairer system that supports children, then this bill fails in its provision. So for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, we will not be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Speaker, it's a privilege for me to